Well, we're going to be going to some other matters right now because, yes, while the call to bar ceremony was happening in Abuja, another event, which we did tell you about, the OPL 245, was also, a story was told around it by former Attorney General Mohammed Bello Adoke, who, chronicled the controversy around that very controversial oil operating license. Well, yesterday, it was a very interesting guest list that appeared at that book launch. I mean, I was quite surprised. Maybe not so surprised, but I did not think I was going to see the vice president there.
Yes, it wasn't a surprise. It was our eyebrows went up. Oh, okay, the vice president is here.
Exactly.
Especially when we're looking at the Amechi.
The roll call.
We're looking at the people in the...
El Rufai.
And then the excuse that we all made, at least I made the excuse, was, well, Mr. Adoke was during the People's Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So it's only natural. This is a story about him and what he went through and what this operating license did to him, his family, his reputation, and opens up a lot of things. We're not saying it's the truth about what happens. It is his account
of what happened.
Well,
there is that for you to look at. So if you're very interested in that particular story, you might want to watch this report. And then we also covered it live, so you might want to watch the entirety of that as well. But that was not what was surprising. I think that what was surprising were the comments of the vice president at that event. And a lot of people had their eyebrows raised when because much as he might have wanted to, praise Mr. Mohammed Bello Adoke for being a man of integrity and a man who stands for what is right no matter what, how there were implications to what the vice president said at that event. So we're just going to ask you to take a listen, and then we'll go to our guest, who is a lawyer. We'll be joined by Ms. Barrister Ekemini Udim, who is a principal partner at the Justice Chambers in Oyo, Akwa Ibom State, who will be joining us to also see if it hit him like that. Well, here is Vice President Kashim Shettima.
Former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan GCFR, with whom we have shared the sword and have now recalibrated our relationship, was mooting the idea of removing this Borno governor, and Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, had the courage to tell the president that, Your Excellency, you don't have the power to remove an elected councillor. The president was still not convinced. He mooted the idea at the Federal Executive Council. I admire Mr. Mohammed Bello Adoke, fundamentally for his courage and for his convictions and for his capacity to stand for what he believes in. He told the then president that, Mr. President, you do not have the power to remove a sitting governor, not even a councillor. They sought for the opinion
that he has for Mr. Bello Mohammed Adoke as a result of his courage and standing for what he truly believes in. And this, was on the basis of telling Mr. President at the time, President Goodluck Jonathan, who he says seemed to be about removing the then governor of Borno State after he had declared a state of emergency in the states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. But, there were conversations as to whether or not the governors were going to have to be removed. And he says that the Attorney General, stood his ground and told the president, you do not have the powers to do so. Now, for a number of people, they'll say it's a little ironic because here, the vice president is in an administration where the current president has suspended a sitting governor in Rivers State. And that has been a matter of controversy. Yes, we know that PDP governors have gone to court to challenge that at the Supreme Court. It hasn't, that case hasn't quite come to light. It hasn't seen the light. The Supreme Court justices are yet to make a pronouncement on this. But this statement certainly has political implications. And let's go to our guests very quickly now. Barrister Ekemini Udum. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Barrister.
Thank you so much for having me, Malwe.
Did this statement come to you? I mean, let me just ask you, how did you perceive this statement when you heard it?
Well, for me, I think we should appreciate the Vice President of Nigeria for coming out to say this. It's restating the obvious. We have said repeatedly, especially when the governor of Rivers State was suspended. We said it repeatedly, and so many other persons in Nigeria, they said it repeatedly that, see, the Constitution of Nigeria has no provision for the suspension of an elected governor. And the vice president has even stated that the president does not even have the power to suspend an elected councillor. How much more a governor? So I thank the vice president of Nigeria for coming out to say this. And I remember that during Jonathan's administration, there were calls for President Jonathan to declare state of emergency in total in Borno State and then suspend the sitting governor, but he refused to do that, certainly as a result of the advice that he got from the Attorney General. One would have expected that the same advice be given to the President of Nigeria in the Rivers State matter, not to go against the Constitution and then suspend a sitting governor. It's a dark part of our history, our democratic history, that a sitting governor, an elected governor, was suspended not only by the president, but by the concurrence of the House of Representatives, lawmakers, and also the concurrence of the Senate, also lawmakers. In the Senate and in the House of Representatives, I'm sure we have not less than 30, if not up to 50 lawyers, some very senior lawyers. I had expected them to advise the president not to toe the line that he told in declaring the state of emergency in Rivers State to the extent of suspending a sitting governor. Yes, some persons would say that the vice president also have said the same thing to the president. He's very close to the president. And one would have also expected that when he heard about the intention to declare the state of emergency and suspend the sitting governor, he should have walked into the president's office to say, Your Excellency, I remember what happened during my time as governor of Borno State. The president was rightly advised that there is no section of the Constitution that allows the suspension of a sitting governor. I benefited from that legal advice. Mr. President, please do not suspend a sitting governor, except his excuse would be that that decision was taken without his knowledge. But if the decision was taken with his knowledge, then the vice president did not also do well because people had to speak for him. One would have expected that he would speak also for the Rivers State matter. But in all, I must commend him for coming out to say this.
I mean, Barrister Udim, while we commend him, while you're commending him as well, for coming out and speaking and reminding everyone of this particular time in Nigeria's history, many people have kind of alluded to the fact that his statements may be giving some credibility to some of the rumors about the friction between him and his principal. And, that conversation really has spiraled into all kinds of thought processes and narratives on social media and wherever, even on regular media, people are talking about this. What do you think about that? Some people have said that this is actually lending credence to that talk about him not coming back if President Tinubu wins the election in 2027, leaving the office of the vice president open. Is this him, consolidating on himself and taking a stand, knowing that he may not be coming back? What do you think about these conversations?
Well, for me, I don't think it is as a result of cracks between the office of the president and the office of the vice president, or between Shettima as a person and the president as a person. I rather think this is someone deciding to state the obvious, deciding to, tell a story, to keep history right.
Not to cut you, Barrister Udim, but in stating the obvious, it does seem like it is a direct pointing fingers directly at the president, because what he's saying he survived is what we're looking at Fubara right now and thinking that, this was not right done to Fubara. So it does feel like you're pointing hands at your principal and saying, look, this happened to me, and then we're now brought to the remembrance of what this president did in Rivers State.
Well, all this is possible, but also note that the vice president could have decided to go to Bello's book launch, the former attorney general, go to the book launch, and decide not to say this part of what he said at the book launch. So I think it is rather a man that has decided to keep history the way it should be kept, tell a story, let the younger generation of Nigerians also get to know exactly what happened at that time, and not necessarily as a result of the fact that there are cracks between the relationship between the vice president and the president. Even if there are cracks, I'm sure that the vice president could have gone to the book launch and just say any other thing, say good about Bello, former attorney general, and then leave without stating this part. But for me, this is me, I'm thinking that it is just a man being happy about what happened, how people intervened, and the man that is doing the book launch is one of the key persons, that intervened for him when it mattered most. It may not necessarily be because there are cracks between him and the president, but it's also possible that it's because there are cracks between him and the president. But like I said, I am one of the persons commending him for coming out to say this now, though I am saying that he should have also rebelled on the president, persuaded the president not to do the same thing in River State. But on the whole, I must thank him for coming out to say this. This will go a long way to stop the presidency, also in making the self-declaration against any other states of the federation, because there is no provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that gives the president the rights to suspend the sitting governor. And I felt very embarrassed.
Mr. Udim, just as we're wrapping up, he also brings to mind our current Attorney General. What do you think should be at the back of his mind as he's listening to how a former Attorney General stood up for something? Should he have said something at the time?
Honestly, I had expected the current Attorney General to do the same thing that Bello Adoke did. I mean, go to the president and tell the president, I am the person that has studied the Constitution all these years. I go to the courts, I defend the Constitution, and I am the chief law officer. The Constitution does not allow you to suspend a sitting governor and does not also allow you to suspend the House of Assembly. I mean, if that had been done, I am sure that the president wouldn't have still gone ahead to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State to the extent of suspending a sitting governor. That action of the president, with the greatest respect to the president, is a dent on the Constitution of Nigeria, and it's also a dent on our democracy, because it's been recorded in history that during this administration, the Constitution was ignored, a sitting governor was suspended, a sole administrator was appointed, and you have seen the confusion that has created. The sole administrator in Rivers State have not really been able to perform the functions of the office that he was asked to go and perform. You can see him not being allowed to be the one presenting the budget to the National Assembly. It is the president that presented. That itself is unknown to the Constitution. And you can see him struggling to even have a standing in the office that he was appointed to go and preside over. And this goes to show clearly that the whole thing that happened in Rivers State, from Abuja, declaring the state of emergency and making a sole administrator and suspending the governor, is completely illegal. And I hope that this is not done anymore by the president against any other governor.
Barrister Udim, I'm sure that we haven't quite heard the last on that particular matter. It's a developing story. I'd like to see it as that. But one matter which we saw a note of finality on was the Supreme Court judgment on the governorship election in Edo State, which I'd like to bring to you very quickly. The Supreme Court dismissed the appeal filed by the PDP and its candidates in the 2024 Edo governorship election, Aswe Godalo. The Apex Court noted that the appellants challenged 395 polling units out of the 5,019 polling units in the entire state. The court held that the appellants did not discharge the onus of proof imposed on them as petitioners under Section 135 of the Electoral Act for establishing substantial non-compliance. That term again, it does appear that every election will be decided on that particular issue, substantial non-compliance. Did it come as any surprise to you?
No, it did not come as any surprise to me. Incidentally, I have had the privilege of representing petitioners at the Election Petition Tribunal. I've also had the privilege of representing respondents. And I know the enormity of the burden placed on the petitioner by the law. And therefore, it never came to me as a surprise. For you to challenge a governorship election in this country, the principles of law that you must rely on are such that it becomes Herculean for you to challenge it successfully. Now you are expected to challenge it polling unit by polling unit. I saw Ighodalo challenged 350 something polling units. Now, the law says you are expected to bring witnesses to testify from the 350 something polling units. And yes, the Constitution gives the tribunal 180 days. This 180 days is to be shared among every other person that is before the courts. And how do you bring 350 something people to testify in court and be cross-examined by all the parties? And you would be expected to have this done maybe within 60 days because you are not the only person before the tribunal. Now, this makes it very difficult for the petitioners to succeed in election petition in this country. Now, the bulk of the work is done at the tribunal. So, at the Court of Appeal, it is just to look at what the Court of Appeal did. At the Supreme Court, to look at what the tribunal did. At the Supreme Court, it is to look at what the Court of Appeal did. Now, when the evidence is presented to the court with documents, and the courts have seen that
I wish we could go through the process blow by blow, but you know what you know, and you've tried to explain to Nigerians what substantial non-compliance means. And given the fact that, this is the amount of polling units he challenged versus the amount of polling units there exist in Edo State, do you think then that the final statement, I was going to say the finality, which Mr. Aswe Ighodalo proclaimed that what happened in Edo State was a robbery, is a fair assessment on the judgment given by the Supreme Court?
Well, I totally understand Aswe Ighodalo. I can feel his pains. He went through the campaigns and everything. He expected victory. But I would not say it's robbery. As a lawyer, I would not be expected to say that. Not because I'm a lawyer, but I don't think it was robbery. It is just because the principles of law in this country are such that Aswe Ighodalo was going to have it very difficult for him to prove the allegations that he made. And for as long as we continue to allow the courts to decide who wins election in Nigeria, we still have a problem at hand. Election must be won at the polling units, declared at the polling units. The transmission should be done electronically without adulteration of the transmission process. Let power belong to the people. When you allow the courts decide based on the evidence presented to the court. Don't forget that INEC is also a party before the courts. INEC is expected to also present evidence. INEC is the body that keeps the documents. And therefore, we must have a situation in this country where election is decided at the polling units and it stands. It doesn't get adulterated during collation. When that is done, I'm sure that most people that lose will not go, to the election petition tribunal. Look at what happened in Ghana. Vice President Baumea, many hours before the close of polls, had to congratulate John Mahama because for him, he has seen a very clear process.
We have to go. We really do have to go. We have to thank you for your time. We do look forward to a day when elections will be decided with finality at the polls in our country. But we have to thank you so much for being on the program. Barrister Ekemini Udim is a principal partner at Justice Chambers, and he's joined us from Uyo in Akwa Ibom State.
My pleasure.
We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll be having the Minister of Arts, Culture and Tourism join us on Sunrise Daily. Please stay with us.